Thank you, Shane, for that warm Saskatchewan welcome, and welcome to another slice of the good, the bad, and the orange. Today, we are honored to have a friend of real estate, a friend of Arizona, and most of all, a candidate. I don't know why he wants to punish himself. He's running for the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board. Is that right? It's a board?
That's correct.
And it's a fascinating subject. It's probably the number one question we get asked by potential clients, or, we've got our Moving to Arizona private group with 17,000 people on it, and they're always talking about water. Oh, I gotta get out. I'm gonna have mud coming out of my faucet. Everyone says we're gonna die. And, I think most of us know that is probably not quite true. But Cory put together this fabulous website for his candidacy called CoryForCap.com. We all should be able to spell that, Cory with a C. And there it has all these facts that really relate to water, I'd say especially in the valley, so the Phoenix metro area. And so we're here to kind of debunk a few things and talk about Cory's, what drove him to run for this. He told me, and I think it was a noble reason. It wasn't...
I thought it was the high salary.
It's power and money, yes.
It is all the canal water you can drink.
Oh, see, you just don't get benefits like that anywhere else.
No. It's definitely a golden parachute.
Hey, Cory, have you ever carp fished in the canal?
I have.
Well, so we talked about that because Taylor and I he took me carp fishing in the canal. What a riot.
Oh, they're hungry.
What a diplomat. See, that's why he's in politics, but no. So again, maybe reiterate, generally, you're a native Arizona.
Born and raised.
Which I think is key compared to an outsider coming in, because you've understood it since literally you were probably playing in the canal. And so kind of give us a little background on you and why you're...
Yeah, so, I was born here, obviously. Thanks for sharing that detail. Born and raised here, grew up, kind of had two sides of the family, my mom's side, my dad's side. On my dad's side, he was the first guy ever to build a condominium in the state of Arizona, so got here a long time ago.
Wow.
Owned the Arizona Biltmore Golf Club for a while, traded his well rights to SRP for surface water rights. And then on my mom's side, they got a divorce, got remarried. My stepdad, we had a cattle feedlot, a cotton farm down in Casa Grande, or Casa Grande, depending on how you want to say it. So we've been around water and those kinds of things kind of my whole life. I think I'm probably one of two people running for this, the other being somebody who's much, much older than me, who have touched a siphon tube, which is what you use to get the water out of your lateral ditch into your fields. So, always been around water, and Jay, to your point, I've had this conversation so many times with clients who go, should I be moving to Arizona? Should I come? Everything I see in the news is you're running out of water. And so I kind of had to get up to speed and really understand what the water situation was, get that, and be able to comprehend it and distill it in a way that made sense to my clients, so that people, when they were moving here, could have peace of mind, because, as you and I were talking, if we don't have water, we really don't have anything else to fight about.
That is a great point.
And I wanted to make sure that I knew those facts so that I could articulate them. And as I got more and more involved in the political scene, people kept asking me, hey, Cory, what are you going to run for? What are you going to run for? And I kind of thought about that. And really the only thing that spoke to me, I thought I could make a really, really nice impact, was water. And we just hear so much scare and fear surrounding water that people are freaking out and wondering, should I come? Should I go? I had a gal call me the other day and say, hey, should I sell my house and move, because my friends from all over the country are telling me Arizona is going to run out of water. And it's a real question. And I always joke, if politicians couldn't give you something to scare you, how would they get you to vote for them? And
so how are you scaring people, Cory?
I'm trying to be contrarian. I'm taking the opposite approach, and really what I'm doing is getting out on the campaign trail. And it's funny, I always tell people there's only one Cory on your ballot. That's the first thing I want you to remember, so that's easy. And then the second thing is we're not running out of water. You know, and I put a lot of these facts on my webpage, and unlike certain other politicians in the world, I cite my facts. But Arizona, we use the same amount of water today as we did in 1957. So we went from about 800,000 people to almost 8 million people. And, you know, tenfold increase, and we use the same amount of water.
So just to quantify that, because even me getting my head around, I love that fact.
Yeah.
But then I go, you're tenfold the people and industry and everything, and we're using the same amount of water. So back in the 50s, where was all the water being used? I mean, what's the difference? Because, you know, now we know it's in every faucet, it's in the, you know, it's in the industry, it's all over. So what was the difference?
It's a $100 billion economic engine for the state of Arizona every year.
So what's the simple difference?
So the simple difference is change in economy. We went from an agrarian economy to, you know, farming economy. When I grew up here, it was the 5 C's of Arizona, and, you know, 3 of those C's were all agriculture.
Right.
Those industries are still here and alive and well, but a lot of that's changed. We've also gotten more efficient at our use of water. You think about just your own house, right? In your own home, if you use your dishwasher, you're only consuming 4 gallons of water for the entire cycle.
Right.
If you wash your dishes in the sink, you're using 2 to 3 gallons a minute. So flow rates in homes has dropped significantly. In addition to that, you've seen our farmers switch to more intuitive farming. They use satellites and drones and heat technology to know where they've got to put the water. Our cotton farmers basically keep their cotton fields laser leveled so that the water doesn't disperse too quickly. A lot of farmers have started farming with, you know, if you ever go to Home Depot, you have that black pipe or that black tubing that kind of sweats out water that you can put around a tree.
Right.
They're putting that underground, and they're actually using that to irrigate instead of doing flood irrigation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just getting better at our use of water. The other thing that people don't really realize is our cities and towns recycle a lot of their water. So a lot of the water that you flush down the toilet or runs down the shower drain, that gets cleaned and then put onto golf courses, put into city parks, or they use it and they recharge the aquifer with it. So, you know.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept too that I know you were talking about that, the recharging of the aquifers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, the visual you see on the national news and even locally is, you know, Lake Mead with the boat from 19 whatever that sunk, sticking out of the ground, and they talk
Jimmy Hoffa's boat.
Yeah, and digging up Jimmy Hoffa and a few of his friends, so they'll find the remains of it and they go, oh look, it's, you know, where it's over.
Yeah.
And I know we could get off on that. You know, our
Well,
usage.
what's shocking is,
Yeah.
25 years ago, those reservoirs were full. I mean, they were actually concerned with water going over the top of Lake Powell and blowing out the dam.
And literally, so there's a lot more going on in that water draining than just
It's
growth.
also, it's water use, it's also electricity. You know, what we don't think about those reservoirs is those are 2 of the largest power generation stations in the West. So, you know, for as much as they need the water, if a place like California doesn't have water going through those turbines at the base of those dams, they have brownouts and they have rolling blackouts in California. So they're demanding that water be released through that system just to keep the lights on.
Well, and the more electric cars they have with their brownouts, the
Yeah.
more water they're going to have to use.
Correct.
That's a brilliant California plan. I
Yeah.
can see why they're.
And they've closed down all but one of the nuclear power generation stations. They've closed down most of their gas power generation. The dirty little secret that California doesn't like to admit is 60% of the electricity comes from coal. And that coal comes from Arizona.
Well, we could talk about coal. My cousin was a coal miner his whole life, and he will get, if you tell him coal's dirty, he'll get on his soapbox and tell you why it's not. You know, but we won't go. We're talking about water, not coal today.
That's a different
Yeah,
podcast.
that's another podcast. So, you know, this idea that I don't know where we were. Go ahead.
So I did a little bit of research
Hey, good.
on the top rumors, and there's one that there's a Saudi water company.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't, because it's interesting, because actually the source that I pulled up, I wouldn't necessarily go to them for my news.
It was actually originally an article by the Arizona Republic. So it's a real story. So first and foremost, the good news for me is that's not in my jurisdiction. But the reality is in Arizona, we have a state land department. And that state land department is bound by statute to utilize the land that we have in the state of Arizona. And if anybody wants to make a bid on a piece of land in the state of Arizona that's owned by all of us, you and me, as the residents of Arizona, they have to make a proposal that goes out to bid. And an entity that is owned by the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, they own that entity. They put in a bid to farm this land out in the Harquahala River Valley.
Can you spell that?
I actually can.
Okay,
Yeah.
I figured you could. I figured.
Yeah,
You seem
I
so-
can't say it, but I can spell it. But that's about 2 valleys over from here, going west. Big farming valley, and really the conversation isn't about a foreign company growing alfalfa for export, because Arizona exports a lot. We're actually about a $24 billion industry. Agriculture, we're the number 2 exporter of fresh vegetables in the country, number 1 exporter of leafy vegetables. Our cattle industry is about $1 billion industry. Our dairy industry is about $1 billion industry. So, we actually are kind of the salad bowl for the rest of the country in the winter. So it's really important that we have this export economy. It's what makes
Right.
Arizona successful. I think that the conversation is one that needs to be had at the legislature, because the state land commissioner has to lease it. They have a schedule on how they figure out the value, and you need to have a conversation with your legislature to say, hey, what are we going to charge for water on our state land? Because there's no charge of the water, and we need to start treating water like it has value. And I think that that's one of the conversations I want to have in this position is how do we give a valuation to water? Because I think it's naive, and it's a symptom of a bygone era that water is basically free, and we need to have that conversation. So I don't mind. I always joke, I would love to have Saudi Arabia dependent on us than us on them.
No, well, I mean, I agree, and also, I mean, they're not taking up, I mean, it's not that much.
No, I mean, it's one farm. It's the biggest farm in that valley.
Do you know how many acres it is?
No clue.
Okay.
No clue. But
It's not in the captive.
I didn't
keep
read
in
this part of
mind,
the article.
keep in mind, this is the thing that people don't understand. An acre of alfalfa in Arizona produces 8.5 tons of alfalfa. That same acre in the Midwest, you only get about 2 to 2.2 tons per acre. So we have some of the most productive farmland in the country, and it'd be a shame not to use it and not to benefit from the fact that we have 320 days of sunshine a year.
Okay, next question real quick. I'll
Yeah,
get 'em out of the way, then
I'm
you
glad.
can-
Oh, yeah.
Go,
Okay,
go,
so,
fire,
yeah,
rapid
guys,
fire.
Also-
Taylor with the hard questions.
Yeah, no, this one's a little more interesting, I think. So,
Does it have to do with donkeys?
it doesn't.
Okay.
So you guys allegedly can make your own rain storms.
Cory
Well,
can't.
not me.
You can't, oh,
These
now
are
you lost my
hands,
vote.
they are not wands.
Yeah. No, okay, but I heard that that's a state level technology, correct? I had heard that from.
So it's called seeding clouds.
Okay.
So you have to have clouds to start with, but you can seed it. I think it's with something called sulfur dioxide,
Yeah.
where they fly over clouds and then they put out sulfur dioxide over them, and then that encourages them to release their moisture.
Interesting. And is that, they said, so we had a guy come.
So let's back up.
Yeah, let's back up, okay.
So I want to dispel a little rumor, or a little bit of misinformation. Arizona is actually, we're not in drought, the state of Arizona, for all of you who are listening. And that's according to the USGA, or United States Geological, what is it, geological, it's not an A.
USG.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. The US government says we're not in a drought, we're dry.
Now, that wasn't
Oh, we're in
CDC
a-
who said that, was it?
No, it wasn't
Okay,
CDC.
just checking.
Well, they also
Sometimes they
said we weren't
they
in a
come in.
recession though.
Yeah,
too.
But-
sorry, okay. yeah.
So Arizona's not in a drought. And I always tell people, if you're going to pray for rain in Arizona, pray for snow in Colorado.
Yes.
The Colorado River is in a drought. And that really has more to do with what's happening in the Rockies than it does down here.
Right.
If you go look at the Salt River Basin right now, at the end of the snowmelt season, after all the runoff is done, they're at about 110% of their historical capacity right now. They're talking about adding height to their dams to have additional storage
Is
capacity.
that the Roosevelt Dam
Uh-huh.
raising? You know,
Yeah.
I've had people ask me about that. Go, we're in a drought. Why would they do that? Well, because you
Because
just answered
the
that.
Salt River Basin is so well managed, and they no longer have the same agricultural needs that they once had. So they're actually doing very well with their water. And we're talking, the CAP and SRP are talking about putting in an interchange so that in times of surplus on the Salt River Basin, they can put water into the Central Arizona project, and in times of surplus for the Central Arizona project, they can put water into the Salt River Basin. So our challenges are all meetable, and we have the technology to do it. We have the resources to do it. It's about coming up with solutions rather than running around like Pollyanna and telling everybody that the world's on fire.
Well, that seems to be the way everything is right now. It's
Clickbait.
Yeah, clickbait. I listened to just this little bit of all this little bit of information you've put forward, which is facts and backed up like a great paper written in college where you've got all your sources. But and it amazes me, I guess, in some ways, since it's our natural resource, and that there wouldn't be more information out about the practical side of the water issue,
Yeah.
at least from Arizona. I know, again, we get outside, we get to the national news. It's all about, hysteria, gets people to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I always say Arizona, we have an advantage in that we know we live in a desert,
Yeah.
whereas California, Southern California is all desert. This is what people, I mean, the LA Basin, desert. All of that is desert, and in Arizona we had the advantage that we knew it, we planned for it for a long time, and in California they're just now coming to that reality, right? And we've done well for the last 70 years. We've had great water policy. The last 35 years we've been putting water underground for not a rainy day but a dry day, and we put over 3 trillion gallons of water underground just for a moment like this. So we're prepared.
Right.
Doesn't mean we can't do better. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do better. But I believe that it's about showing people how they can do better, rather than telling people what they can't do and why not to do it and how not to do it. It's how can you do what you're doing better. And I think
A
that's
more
the solution.
positive outlook on
Correct.
it than negative. I know you talk about doing better. Joan Sikora, the membership director at Desert Highlands, was saying that they're looking at redoing all of their coarse grasses in a
Yeah.
more water efficient grass, and probably not something they need to do, but thinking proactively.
Correct.
And I think you're right. We don't have to do anything, but we could do this, and this would be being a good steward.
Yeah, and the Arizona Biltmore Golf Club is doing the same thing. They're tearing up all of their Bermuda. They're putting in a hybrid Bermuda, and that's going to use about 40% less water than the previous Bermuda. So with some turf reductions and changing the layout of the course, they're going to cut their water consumption by half.
Will that make my ball roll further when I hit a burner? Because that's really how I get to the green.
Yeah, bad news for you, it's still Bermuda.
So good, right?
Yeah.
Taylor, did you have something you
Yeah, so from a layman's terms, and I've only lived here for a
Ever?
couple of years.
Okay.
No, only a couple of years.
from Minnesota?
From Minnesota. Yeah.
Plenty of
So
water there.
there is. They say 10,000 lakes, but anything with more than like 4 inches of water, they're like, oh yeah, that's a lake.
Yeah, that's
City
it. Put some
Hawkeye.
walleye in there.
Yeah, we should probably edit that
okay.
part.
All right,
But anyways,
okay.
so for layman's terms, for someone who's just new to here, right?
Mhm.
What do you do, and what do you have direct control over, as simple as possible?
Yeah, so the CAWCD, it's my alphabet soup for the day. So they oversee the Central Arizona project. This is the project that brings all the water from the Colorado River to Central Arizona. So their primary function is it's a taxing board, and they oversee 2 portions of tax, and that's first and foremost to pay back the federal government for putting in the giant ditch. The ditch. And then also to pay for delivering the water. So the objective of the CAP is to deliver the water as cost-effective in a manner as possible. And then in addition to that, you have a bully pulpit. And the bully pulpit is to talk about water and how do we do better with it. And for me, I think, this is really what is interesting to me. I always go out and talk to people. I said, I run a business. I understand how to balance it. I balance a book and all of that and make sure that we're living within our means. And I also have the appreciation that it's not the government's money, it's your money the government's using. So
funny that concept.
Yeah,
I just don't understand.
So that's the first part of it. But the second part is who on this board is standing up and talking about the hypocrisy within the basin of all the other states taking cuts and California taking none. And I don't mind being a good neighbor, and when times are tough, I'm happy to cinch up my belt and do that. But I expect my neighbors to do the same. California gets more water out of the Colorado River than anyone else. They get 4.5 million acre feet. And they do not do near the amount of reclamation or mitigation that we do in Arizona or that they do in Nevada. I mean, Nevada almost runs themselves at a Israel level of efficiency. And Arizona, we recycle almost all of our water. In California, most of it, almost all of it, goes right out to the sea after it gets treated. California lets 60% of their rivers, the river water, flow right out into the ocean.
Is that kind of why San Francisco's outflow into the bay is somewhat polluted?
Yeah, it's very polluted, but they just had a huge bloom there. They tried to blame it on
Poop on the sidewalks? No, I'm sorry.
They had a bloom and they said it was global warming, and
Yeah.
we can have that conversation. It's a different conversation, but it actually came down to they have an exemption from the EPA to not clean their water as much, and they pump it right out into the bay. So their sewer water gets treated mildly and then sent out into the bay. But here in Arizona, we treat, the city of Peoria probably is the leader in Maricopa County.
Interesting.
And they recycle 100% of their water, clean it almost to drinkable levels, use it on golf courses, city parks, or to recharge the aquifer.
And when they're recharging, that's cleansing it anyhow, right?
Yeah, you're putting it through thousands of feet of soil as
Yeah.
a filter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, back when I was growing up in Waconia, Minnesota, we had a lake there.
You betcha.
You betcha. Well, just talking about the discharge in water. So there was a bay they called Turds Bay, and the reason it was because the sewer plant was on there.
Oh, it
They
wasn't
discharged-
after Michael Turds, no.
No, it wasn't. But you think about, I've thought about that. They used to grow potatoes in that bay because the soil was so rich, but they were discharging. And so you think about Arizona literally having almost 100% repurified water, and Nevada doing the same. And it's actually remarkable the technology's there, but it's not like they have to be told to do it. They've just had the forethought to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the Active Management Act of 1980, when we changed it over to active management areas in the state of Arizona, and our cities have been tasked with doing a lot to conserve water. And one of the ways you can conserve water is to reuse it.
Yeah, well, and I think that's, I always felt like Arizona was, I always say to people, Arizona is a place where they kind of do their own thing. Very independent thinking and very welcoming, but don't try to change us because we're, it's a very innovative place and it's a very welcoming place. And I think this is one small area where we see this, where it's just been so proactive. I think, again, I go circle back to the stat of 1957 and think about, it's just impossible to quantify how large the valley is now, using the same amount of water as...
Phoenix uses less water today than they did in the year 2000. And you think about that. They've added 1 million people that use less water in the city of Phoenix.
Yeah, that's
So,
crazy.
It's just kind of, it's what we do. we do a lot with a little. We stretch every drop and make sure it counts. And that's what we do well. We need to remind people we do that well. And then how do we do it better? I was meeting with a farmer. They have the largest melon farm in the state. I think it's the largest melon farmers in the world. And they've reduced their water consumption by about 60% just going to drip irrigation. So, there's a lot of stuff that we can do to make sure that we do a better job. And, by reducing their water consumption, they're also reducing their fertilizer consumption. So they're saving in multiple locations.
Saves costs,
Saves
everything.
costs and, makes them more profitable.
So last, as we kind of get towards wrapping up, so you're a real estate professional, I think, and you're actually a leader in our industry, whether you think so or not. I mean, you are looked up to as very respected and knowledgeable. So, Arizona's crashing, the market's never be the same. We all know that that's not true. How do you see things right now?
You have a very different definition of a crash than I do.
Yeah.
No, I think Arizona real estate's doing well. The way I describe it is it's kind of like you've been driving a Ferrari for the last 2 years, and it's been very, very fast and very exciting. And then now you're driving back in an Escalade. Yeah, it's a little more comfortable, a little more relaxed, but it's still really nice. I mean, the market's not crazy, and I think that's a good thing for everyone. And I think it'll be a fun couple of months. And once we get to January, I think everything's gonna take off again.
I do too. Yeah, that's you. I can hear you now. I was trying to get that. Do you have a little bit of background?
Yeah,
noise?
I think the air conditioner.
I agree. We agree as well. We think that the market. First of all, the luxury market hasn't really stopped. I mean, at all.
No, it's actually the best part of the market.
I know it's, and I firmly believe we're going to have an event where you're elected and others are elected, and I think there'll be this huge sigh of relief. Even just
It's
that-
at least to certainty, right?
Right, that's always it. Everyone goes, if this happens or this happens, well, it isn't that. It's just that it happened.
Historically speaking, after every election, there's always a bump in the economy.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because people are excited about one person or another. Apparently, it's Doug here.
It's
here
Dean.
At the Orange Vortex. All right.
Dean has come in to visit.
All right, we've got a puppy.
Yeah.
And
Poor Cory. Cory goes, what have I gotten into? But anyhow,
but historically speaking, there's always a bump after an election, and it's
Yeah.
not because we like that one party or the other one. It's that the market now has certainty.
Yeah.
They now know what's going to happen, and they can plan for it. So, I'm looking forward to that.
I am too.
I'm also looking forward to being done campaigning because I'd love to put my kids to bed at night. So, the first thanks I always give is to my wife for letting me do this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's good to get everyone's perspective. I mean, I don't think there's any magic to it. The underlying economy in Arizona is strong. And I think philosophies like Arizona's on water make it strong. There's other things like that make Arizona strong to weather things. And so,
remember, only about a third of our water comes from the Colorado.
Yeah.
The rest comes from other rivers in the state, or it comes from groundwater. So we're actually in a pretty good space, especially compared to a place like California that gets 60% of Southern California gets 60% of their water from the Colorado River. So when you look at these, Arizona's really well positioned, and like I always say, we know we're in a desert and we prepared for it.
Yep.
So I think we're going to be good. I think it's giving our farming community the tools they need to continue to be successful.
well, and that's the piece the metro population really doesn't think about. But it's as you pointed out, such a huge part of our economy is that agricultural export. Other than voting and voting often, what can you ask?
Just for once.
What's your kind of your last little bit about you as a candidate and that you want to tell everybody out here in Orange Land?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a shout out to a gal named Shelby Duplessis, who's also on the ballot with me. I've gone out and seen her a number of times, and her and I are kind of simpatico on a lot of the things, so I think she's a great candidate as well. But I remind everybody I'm the only Cory on the ballot, so it's easy to remember. But the real important thing is we need to have people who aren't just good and nice people, but who can articulate the issues and use this as a soapbox and really get out there. I've made the promise that I'm still going to show up after I'm elected and still go places and answer questions and all of that, and I'll have even more knowledge at that point. But it's important that we have people who can articulate it and be that spokesperson for water in Arizona and make sure that people who are looking to relocate here have confidence, that the people who live here have confidence. And that's where I think I'm going to be a real asset to this board, is that I can get up, I can articulate it very well. That's just being in sales and being part of being a real estate agent for 22 years now. That's what I do. I take the facts, I distill them easily so people can understand. We need to have that. That voice is missing right now. Everybody kind of gets gobbled down into the details, and then, the public glosses over and goes, oh God, are we running out of water? What should I do?
Yeah.
And we just need people who can have the conversation in a nice way, show people how they can be better, and not scare them into fear.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I'm glad you're running. Cory and I have some mutual friends, and who anyone would speak highly of your character. And so when you say something, I know that's what you're going to do, because that's what you always do. And you're one of the few people in our industry at 90,000 plus licensees, or whatever the number is now, that gives us all indigestion. But you're right at the top. Well, I would encourage you all to go vote for Cory.
Thank you.
Anywhere in the valley, because it is an important issue, and we need someone who can articulate it and is a great negotiator and also an articulator. And you can go to CoryForCap.com and look at all his information. You can actually donate to his campaign, which I think everyone should do. We all use a deduction. And
no deduction for it. It's politics.
Oh, well, all right.
But
I could try. I have to ask my
you can
accountant.
contribute, and to your point, I've got a water facts page on my webpage, so it's Cory, Cory for cap.com, and I encourage people to go there and just know some facts. Super helpful in for your own life and for your own conversations. And I would tell people, go to that page so that you know some helpful answers, and your friends can't tell you to move back to Minnesota.
Yeah, just the facts, ma'am, right? I mean, that's the truth. I mean, that spells everything. Facts do. This wraps up another Slice of the Good, the Bad, and the Orange, sponsored by Lawyer's Title, where they'll make sure your well certificate is recorded so you have water. And thanks, Cory and Taylor, for being on, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jay.